Okay.
And the microphone's on?
That's on, yeah.
Okay. It is Monday, September 11th, 2024. This is 2023. Today's May.
Yeah.
This is meeting of the Northfield Fire Department Building Committee. Those present. Oh, and it's 5:32. Those present. Kevin Walton, Dennis Manning, Chief Sitar, Lisa Martin, Nate Langione, Tim Sattler, Paul Blaisdell, and Jim Hardy from Barrero. So we'll start by fulfilling Kathy's wishes and distribute the minutes from.
Do we need to note that we're at the Tilton Town Hall downstairs meeting room?
You just did.
Yeah.
Duly noted.
We're back.
Oh,
Is this a take while we pass rest?
yeah.
Take one
Is there some reason why Kathy stiffed us on the copies?
It's okay,
I don't
I've
know.
already got it.
I don't need a copy, I don't have a vote.
8 copies and there were only 6. Thank you. This is from July 10th. Yeah, I don't get a vote either, so here, Lisa. You
I
have-
have a
oh, you
copy.
have
You
one.
do get a vote.
I wasn't,
He wasn't here.
I wasn't present. No.
You get to vote present. Abstain.
Thank you, Tim, for filling in, by the way.
You want?
Everyone's reviewed them? Do I have a motion
Dennis
to
seemed pretty
accept?
mouthy at that last one.
What's that?
It's like, damn. I said Dennis seemed pretty mouthy at that last one.
Well, that's pretty typical, isn't it?
I move the minutes of the July 10th meeting as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Is there any discussion?
Can
Does
we
that
get
come
discussion?
next?
No.
Yeah, I just have a comment.
Comment?
On the review, yes.
Okay.
We're at the third paragraph under new business where Dennis was commented he felt the 2019 committee results were based solely on money. If you recall, I had commented that it was actually, I was on that committee and the major concern was that we needed to leave Center Street and that Park Street was available and that we knew we'd need a station in the future. Because I don't want him to think that 2019.
Well, we can kind of resolve that tonight, I think, because it was my
That's right.
intention to kind of review those recommendations.
Right, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, these are meeting minutes, and in that meeting, I made that
That's what,
statement.
okay,
So I'd just like to have that added in there, that,
okay.
you know, I was on the committee, and that the concern was that we needed to leave Center Street. And we had the property available.
Okay, would you like to
I can give
make a
Chief,
motion on the revised, or the,
sure. You want me to actually read it? Wait.
no, as long as Beth, or it's no longer Beth.
No,
right?
so we hired a new woman to take Beth's place. Her name is Courtney Palmer. She lives in Laconia. She's had multiple jobs. She's a graduate of Suffolk University in Boston. And she's starting next Monday.
Welcome, Courtney. Welcome to the jungle. So, I guess once Courtney revises those, we can vote on them next meeting. Is that,
Unless we want to vote on it as
You can say
revised.
as amended.
As amended.
I guess I'll amend my motion to include the additional information or content that Lisa just verbalized.
Second.
okay, we'll try it again. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, amended. Amended minutes are approved. Okay, so, I guess, do you have an agenda, Chief? Was there an agenda for?
No.
No, okay.
I expected that the building committee would review the geotech and site evaluation report, and then as well the space needs study report, which, and then after those, hopefully at this point, the building committee could make a recommendation to the commissioners, for the commissioners to consider what direction does the
Well, let's start by asking everybody, have they had an opportunity to review the two reports?
I have.
No.
I have not,
You have not?
no, we got it Friday and I had a busy weekend.
Yep, okay. Well, yeah, I guess it was my intention tonight to give some direction to Lorero as far as where we wanted the schematic, design schematics to be headed. And with that being said, there's, the geotechnical, I think, is pretty in-depth, and a lot of it is technical.
Well, could I make a suggestion? Wouldn't it be appropriate maybe if we just made a motion on the subject, have it seconded, and then go into discussion and discuss why or why not? I mean, because obviously if you make
Why
a
what?
motion, why we would or would not go with the motion. Like I say, okay, I would move that we accept Lorero's recommendation to go with the 45 Salmon Road based on this report in its entirety. And then we can go through the report in the discussion.
Well, if you want to make a motion, you're welcome to make a motion anytime.
But I was just thinking we could kick that off like that and go from that end. And then the discussion could actually be.
Well, I don't
reviewing
think I don't think it's valid to have a discussion tonight if two members have said that they haven't read the report, unless you want to read it while the meeting.
Right, I mean, there's a lot of information to digest, and I don't think that this is something we should just snap at and say, yes, let's go with one or the other. I thought public outreach would also be included before we made a decision on which site, because the public should know that we looked at two sites.
Well,
Don't we
maybe,
want the public's opinion?
So, as far as the two reports go, I think the space needs study is the more relevant of the two, just because it's a little more condensed
You know, just a
than
synopsis, really.
the geotech and site evaluation. So it might be worth reviewing that as a group tonight.
yeah, we can certainly do that. We can review it since we have Mr. Hardy here as
Yes,
well.
I wasn't
And-
sure if he was planning on giving a presentation or an overview or something, or whether he was just available for questions.
Mr. Hardy?
I'm here for whatever you need.
Okay.
That's it. Go ahead.
So,
So I don't think we as a committee have the authority to give, and I apologize to the end of the world for not being able to pronounce that,
Lorero.
the company's name, to give them any direction. The direction will come, well, the path for everything has been, the committee makes a recommendation to the commissioners give the direction.
it was my full intention this evening to have some consensus from this group in order to present tomorrow evening to the commissioners. And I agree with you, it's not our mandate to give direction to the chief or Lorero. It's our mission
Right.
to give direction to the commissioners, and this is their ballgame.
Right. Yeah, well, that was my point with what I was talking
Were
about.
we all aware of that, though? We just got this Friday, didn't we?
Yes.
So
And
as
we
far
knew
as
that
the
that was
schedule,
meeting
no.
for today?
No, I
That we were gonna make a
don't
decision
believe
today.
there was an agenda. I think it was the
Right.
assumption that people would see the email
I was
Friday
not
and
here this
review,
weekend.
but there was no specific action called out. And it's been some time since we had a meeting, so.
Well, at the end of tonight's meeting, if we're not comfortable giving the commissioners direction, then that will not happen. It just won't.
Yeah, so I think we may have jumped the gun a little bit, because we're still like first 10 minutes into the meeting. So maybe we take 5 minutes to go, individually go through the space needs study, and then,
5 minutes?
yeah, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, it's only a 15-page document.
I read it all this afternoon, I drove there all this afternoon. If I could, I would just like to ask just a couple of quick questions, really. Like on page 8, the cost analysis, I mean, that's where we all go to all the time anyway, so. If you look at the Salmon Road building, you're looking at an estimate at $5,164,614. And then you're looking at Park Street at $7,353,543. And my question is, when we were talking, and those numbers, if I read it correctly, do not include the site work. And then we were given site work estimates at $914,000 for Park Street. So that's an additional $914,000 if I'm not mistaken. And an additional $669,000 plus whatever the demo is for Salmon Road, and that whatever the demo for Center Street, because if we go with Salmon Road, we have to turn that's part of the land agreement. So I just threw that in there. So, but that's still $175,000 less than the 914. Never mind all the stuff that was in the geotech surveys and stuff where they came up with as far as site work.
So that money is not included here?
No.
The site work, no.
Why is it not included?
Well, it's
Included in the report, but it gives you a basis of, because we don't know which site you want to work on.
right.
So we gave you a site number for one and a site number for the other.
Right, because like it says, the following are building only costs. The site work and infrastructure costs have been included in the geotech survey and site evaluation.
But the buildings aren't the same either. One is
1,400
bigger than the other.
Right,
Right.
why is Park Street bigger than
Because it's a
Sanborn?
single location,
So
right?
Right, and there's a few things that actually come into Park Street Station. One is that tower that's there. We didn't include anything for the tower, as far as anything had to be done to the tower, moved, or infrastructure coming from Park Street over. Right now, there's some conduits that are underground. Those would remain under the building at the price that we have. We didn't figure any cost in it because we don't know what the owner of the cell tower is going to require to do.
Cell tower's not moving.
But the infrastructure that goes underneath, that goes up to Park Street, there's a bunch of conduits under the site there that were all done by Dig Safe.
There's conduit, there's 2 sets of conduits underneath the grass field.
Yeah,
The ones going to the tower are on the far end. The ones that are like in the grass field are actually coming to Park Street. That's the electric service, and the gas service is actually serviced from behind that fire station.
so this is the. And then we get about to blow up on the 2 sites so everybody can at least get wrapped around
Right.
around it.
In the other
They're in the
report,
report, they're in the end of
Yeah,
it.
they're in
page
that.
11 and 12.
So you're
So
saying
if your
that we
building
need
is out
bigger-
here, yeah,
This is
the
right through here, there's a section of piping that goes through over this tower from that pole.
oh yeah, that's it's a much bigger building than I would ever imagine.
Right, and that electricity would have to, I mean, there's gonna be a lot of utilities that are gonna be disrupted and moved.
So that's one
if we
piece,
need to do a new slab, right?
well, you have to do a slab,
Well, no, but look where the bays are.
it's gonna be under the slab.
Okay, I thought you were talking about the existing building, sorry.
Oh, no. And then the other thing is, I don't know, if you're only doing one station at Park Street, you're gonna have to move the trucks out of there for a while while we renovate that. So I don't know if you've considered if you have another space in town or a lease space, that cost is not
Could you
considered.
consider at all leaving the building there as it is?
As far as what, and add onto it? You couldn't do it by code.
But you can leave it separate and not attached.
Leave Park
You
Street?
could then push it down even further into the corner, which you're already near the wetlands.
I guess you're saying that we need a bigger building at Park Street in addition to our existing, because it's a single station?
Yes.
So if we build something at Sanborn, we only need 14.7.
And you're still gonna have the Park Street existing station.
Yeah, so I
So
believe
if you go to
both-
Park Street, okay, you're showing, you're gonna have the existing, but then you're saying you need 15 now.
Yeah, so
Wow.
there's a new building and then there's the existing building, and so the new building will be 8 bays, correct?
Correct.
Whether it's at either location.
Well, you're adding 55, if we just do remediate, you've got 55. I'm looking at just line 1, the building addition at 15.9 square feet, and Sandward Road is 14.7. Either way, you've got Park Street.
Right,
So
right.
I'm asking why you need 15,900 for an addition versus 14.7.
So if you go into the
That's
space
my-
needs study, you'll see the
Okay.
spaces that are required. And the spaces that are required that you actually need, we had the meeting about discuss different options and requirements. In order to fit that space onto the Park Street station, that's what you need for square footage.
So is it more of a like, because of the
Because of
existing
the
stuff on
layout?
site, the layout gives you less usable feet?
Well, that and like the different, you have the scuba gear that's already at Park Street. You're gonna leave that there.
You have the what?
The SCBA stuff.
SCBA stuff. That's at Park Street already. We don't need to create a new space for that, so that would stay there. So you're not gonna bring that to Sanborn Road.
How much money are you
Correct.
spending in this block right here?
Depends on which model.
He's talking about the existing building on
If
Park
we
Street.
just do the one station at Park Street, I haven't broken it down that far. I haven't, Brian has. I can get you the numbers of what you're gonna spend on the existing piece versus the new piece.
So it looks like to me that the Sanborn Road new building of 8 bays, and then the Park Street addition, which does not have to be connected, of 8 bays. They're slightly different square footage, slightly different cost. So if we were doing nothing with the existing Park Street building, it's still 8% and 450-ish thousand, cost difference between the two locations. And that's if we assume that whatever we do to remediate the Park Street building that currently exists would be the same amount of money. So it would be 55,000 and change, regardless of if we do the addition or if we do the new building at Sanborn Road. But
Correct.
there's the potential that, given the issues with the existing building, it may need to be completely removed and completely rebuilt, which is why there's that third figure of almost 1.6 million and change. So that is like worst case scenario. We have to completely start from scratch on that footprint. Then it's a lot more than just doing a new building at Sanborn Road.
Well, you
Well,
would
if
need
you're
to
just
do
doing a
that
new building at
regardless.
Sanborn Road, you're not gonna do the work at Park Street. Right, Chief? That was the discussion. So you're gonna do the work, new station at Sanborn Road, and then at a later date, you'll do internally some of the remediation and remodeling that you wanna do at Park Street. So
The other difference, and maybe you mentioned it, but the Sanborn Road solution is 8 bays with no additional work on Park Street. The Park Street station is 12 bays. So that's part of that size difference.
The 4 and the 8.
Well, no, the Park Street is 8 bays and then 55,000 to fix the 4 bays at the existing building.
Right, there's 12 total in the end, because there's 4 existing.
Yeah, so I mean,
So you're
we-
including 8 bays in both scenarios,
yes.
additional 8 bays, or just,
Net-
right now we have 4, you're saying?
Right now, we have 4 at Park
4 Park
Street.
Street.
We will have 8 net new if we build at either location. Unless we need to completely demolish everything at Park Street and build a 12-bay station.
So I'm not seeing anything in this cost that reflects that, is that correct?
So you could just add the
You're
$55,000
saying no matter
figure
what
there.
we're
So this
building
is,
for.
and this is a schematic cost in the beginning too, so I wouldn't get hung up on the cost right now. This is not out to bid. This is our number by, if you read it, it's our you know, our estimators went through it, we budgeted it, we had it gone through, it's not a street price, right? So who knows when you go out to bid in March, the numbers will be different. By the time we get there, we'll have a better budget on it. But this is very schematic, early development pricing. So you see a good round number on where it's gonna be, but you're gonna pick
Right.
specialties and finishes and block and roofing materials and all that. That's gonna change some of the square footage.
Well,
Price.
that was like some of the other questions. So when you go to the, you know, if you go to page 2 and 3 in the, is that the that's the
Can we take a
geotech?
step back? Kevin, did you get your question answered?
Yeah.
No, there is no answer to it. The answer was we didn't figure that out.
What is the,
How much money are we spending on this current 4,800 square foot structure? And why are we spending money on that?
well, if we build the Sanborn Road, you're not spending anything on it, okay? If we're doing Park Street, then I'll have a number for you tomorrow morning, what our estimated carried in there.
And that's simply
Well,
bringing it up to
isn't it
code
already
because
here?
we're
Yeah, the number
adding
is
to
there.
it.
It's if we are, It-
We can, yeah,
absolute ideal condition, it only costs us $55,000 to fix the issues that they're
Roughly,
aware
right.
of. Yeah. If
Rough estimate.
they have to completely reconstruct it, that's where that
Well, we know this-
That's the answer to your question right
But
there.
my question is, we're comparing, if you forget Park Street right now, if we look at a building addition to Park Street, and we look at Sanborn Road, what we're comparing is 5.1 million to 5.6 million, am I correct?
yes.
but you have to do the work. You
Yeah.
have to do the work down here in order to do that work, so it's 7 million. You can't just say, I'm gonna
Right.
do part of this.
Right.
You have to bring the
The
old building up to code.
55 is part of a larger
You have
project.
to bring the old building up to code
Right.
if what?
If you do any work, if you do more than 50% addition, or any work, 50% of the value of that property has to go up to code. So the problem with Park Street is that your roof structure right now only has 45 pounds per square foot snow load, and you need 75 pounds. Your wind load on the front building, the front of the building, does not meet code, it has to be changed. You have problems with the slab.
So if it had to be changed, we'd have changed it before now.
No, because you haven't done any work to
Wow.
require a permit
Wow.
on that.
No, there's been, how many of these committees have we had?
Well,
to
that's
try
what I'm
to-
saying.
To try to bring it up to code, and it's never been brought up to code.
Yeah, so the issue is the existing building at the Park Street is somewhat of a Pandora's box because we don't know how bad it is and how much it will cost. And once we start, we will then be obligated
Leave
to
it
complete it.
alone, is what I've said from day
But
one.
you're saying if we build on that site, we're required by code.
So not even if they're
That's-
even if they're
that's-
disconnected.
On site, or if
If
you
you pull a
touch,
permit on that property, you need to upgrade that property to code.
Which is why the Sanborn
Where is that
Road
written?
presentation.
It's in the code book. It's just 2018, just passed, I think it was September last year. I think this was built in 1986, which would have been the 2016 code.
And
So if we
Well,
could.
No, way before that, yeah, 2016 was the last code. that was changed.
So it makes no
1960.
sense to me to renovate Park Street, okay, at all. What if you wiped out the garage? Do we have the right number to build a station on Park Street
Yes, so
without renovating?
if you reconstruct the existing building, it's 1.6 million.
on page
So
2
essentially-
of the Space Needs Committee.
So you're saying if you build a new building, well, why would, you wouldn't build just that, you would build the total station.
What code it was built under.
Yeah,
Am I
you need
asking the
that,
right
you need the
question?
space on the old building to make this
Correct, and
this
you're
whole thing
saying
work.
this is the cost if we were replacing the current garage. I'm gonna call it a garage because it's not a
That's
fire
what it
station.
is.
It's a garage.
Yeah,
That's the cost to renovate that
But
building.
what, I'm saying, wipe it right out and put a new station
Well,
at Park Street.
I don't have that number because we didn't give you a number for that.
No,
We
no,
didn't
so
give
like,
you that number.
you did,
Not to rip that
He's
building
saying,
down,
no,
we
this
did
is to
not.
renovate. It costs
Right.
more to renovate that building, I know it does, than it does to just tear it down and start over.
so we have the remediation cost.
Yes,
It is, it
55.
is 55.
But Nate, remember, that's part of a larger project. That's not a standalone price.
Right.
Right, no, but the idea is, so if we build the new building, if we do the addition, and we remediate Park Street, it's, 5.6 and then, 55, so let's just call it 5.7 million. If we do the addition and, as you say, just, wipe out or rebuild from the ground up the existing garage, the existing garage would be 1.7 million. The addition cost would be 5.6 million. So then we're looking at about 7.3 million.
Well, you
Well,
still have to
that's what
remove
he's
the old
doing.
building for 55,000, you gotta get rid of that building. That's the cost to get rid of that building.
Okay, so that's not a
That's
cost of just,
remediation,
that's not a cost
demolition,
of
you're
just
saying.
like fixing the existing
No, that's-
things.
Right, it's really kind of like, it's delineated right here when you look at the cost per square foot. I mean, that's what lines up. This, if I'm not mistaken, is 15,000, well, 16,000 roughly. This is 4,800. The remediate, to get rid of this, that's your 1150 per square foot. To rebuild this whole blue rectangle there is the total.
Okay,
It's
I-
$351 a square foot estimate.
So
That's where
this
you get those two
this
numbers.
7.3 is the total of all of these numbers?
Correct.
Which is correct,
Right.
okay.
Okay, I was thinking by remediation it meant resolve the existing problems in that building. So it would
No.
only be 55,000 to make that usable as part of the new 8-bay
No.
addition.
So what I'm having a tough time grasping is why, if we built one station over here, I guess you're saying because we have two stations, it costs less to build at Sanborn Road?
Because we're not
We're
touching
not
Park
touching
Street at
Park
all,
Street at all.
nothing.
And you don't have the
Leave it
square
as it
footage,
is.
you don't have the square footage requirement that you need on Park Street.
We are
There's a
still going to
four-bay
possess that
garage.
4,800 square feet.
Well, you still are here too. So
Okay.
now you're getting 20,000 versus 18 or something, right? I know I'm only looking at like, what, 2,000 square feet?
So if we were to,
But-
fix the Park Street existing garage at some point in the future, that would be around 1.7 to tear it down and rebuild, 4 bays in that footprint.
No. No.
Because it's part of the whole project.
So it would be more than that because we're not doing the 5.6 million of the addition.
Yeah, you're not.
Okay.
Yeah, other than you can combine two projects and you'll get the economy of scale.
Well, plus if you're tearing the whole building down, not just remediating what you need to in order to build onto it, then, you've got to put foundations in and everything else, that's not included in there.
I thought that was part of the existing building reconstruction cost.
Existing building reconstruction cost is to repair the things that need to be repaired in order to move forward with, by code. But we still have to have some demo work in there, remove walls, remove trusses, do all that stuff, and then you build on after that's done.
Okay, I guess I don't quite understand like the difference between like the remediation and the reconstruction entry then, because if,
Remediation should say removal, correct, demolition. Remediation generally means you
It's like a
fix-
selective demolition, it's not taking and removing the whole building.
Oh,
We're
I would
removing the
remove it.
parts that don't meet code, so that we can start building new and working towards a code compliant building.
okay, and so then that 1.7 million is the upgrades to that 4,800 square footage after fixing the problems we know about code-wise.
Correct. That's just-
Well, except it's 351 per square foot, that's like building a building, right? If you're saying this is the removal, if you,
So
anyway, okay.
would your estimation be that the removal of that building would be more than $55,000? Demolition and removal?
We have a little bit of contingency in there, we have to put a contingency in there because the price is gonna change and we have to figure that something's gonna come along the way, so.
What was Central Street?
Of course, it's a bigger building, but it was like 72,000 to remove the building. That included any hazardous materials remediation.
Yeah, there's a lot of like brick and like,
And you're coming in and demoing the entire building, right? You're not doing
what
selectively,
was
just
it
coming
again?
in with a crane and,
75?
Yeah,
I
they
have
want
it.
a flat parking lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
Are there
I'll see.
hazardous
There's a
materials like
difference.
asbestos and
Yeah.
things like that, or is that all?
No, I
there's
don't
no-
believe that, the only asbestos in that part, Center Street station might be in the mastic to some of the old flooring.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's nothing
Yeah.
in there.
But there's lead paint, that's the only.
It would paint abatement, yeah.
Yes, there is lead paint on the exterior of the
So,
building.
so at worst, it's
Fire
$100
department's
grand,
do control
right,
permit.
to get rid of,
And we
To
can
get
burn
rid
church
of
down
Park,
at the
to
same
get rid
time.
of Park Street?
no, Center Street.
Okay.
Because that's what will probably happen.
So
Because
Jim
you have
had
to get rid of
mentioned,
Center Street to get due sand mine, so that
correct,
cost, that
correct,
cost
that's
should
part
be,
of, that's part of the
that
cost.
should be added here.
So Jim had mentioned previously that when I threw out the $70,000 that we talked about over the course of the last 3 or 4 years as demolition costs of Center Street, Jim had mentioned that that's an extremely high quotation, that he's got people that he's worked with in Manchester, New Hampshire, who could do it for significantly less. So maybe Jim could add something somewhere along the line as far as a more realistic number for us to consider there.
The one thing is you can't destroy that building without going through the state's historic preservation
No, this one?
tabs here.
Yes.
It's not on any list.
It's not an issue.
It's not an issue at all.
What are you
It was
talking
never
about?
registered at all. for
It doesn't
anything.
matter, it's eligible.
Someone has,
It's Obama put that law into place, the Preservation Act, and it's public money. You'll get burned if you don't follow the rules. I know, because we've done this on other projects. You can do that. I'm just saying, you have to document it and have it at the registry. But if you don't think you don't have to, okay. I'm gonna-
I'll be the first one they come to. I'll just make sure if,
It's just a
I'll try to make sure that I'm out of
It's a-
town.
What it is a
Wherever you were, I
historic
was too.
study. It's-
But anyway, but you know what, if I could change, I'm staying on the same subject, but different place. I did want to, when you're talking about, I had some questions, and I'll just ask the general question. Like I said, on page 2, it's with the geotech, the big one here, Tilton Northfield Fire District Build Design Phase 1 Geotech and Site Evaluation. Page 2 and 3, when you go down to existing data on the environmental site assessment, 4.1, it's talking about a lot of the stuff that makes me a little uneasy about Park Street. This is Park Street, right? Yeah. Is this on Park Street? Multiple USDs. Yeah. When they were talking about the underground storage tanks, and
There's
it
none
seems,
there.
well, it seems like a lot of anecdotal data around that. Well, a horse went through and we filled it in. You know, it's like. Then there was other parts about fire station drainage at one point that was draining into a tank that has been removed, compromised, or something. What was it? I'm just, you know, I don't have a warm fuzzy that because they're saying we also have an active.
does anybody have the Wi-Fi password for this building?
I know. I did at one time, but it was a different.
I did at
phone,
one
so
point, but
I can't look it up.
let me see. Where do we? Oh yeah. So it says the landfill and the VOC plume are both active remediation sites. So if they're active remediation sites, how does that? I was wondering about that. Was one that stood out with me. Is how does
The
that?
towns have come to an end.
Well,
if
the
it's
septic
active-
system has to be removed, and it has to be
Right, the
disposed of
septic.
properly. You can't just dump that in a landfill
Well,
somewhere.
right, but I'm just, so my question, I just like, what is, especially this one right here, the landfill, which one of these, is that the only thing that we're talking about? No, this is, where it says the adjacent highway garage site has groundwater monitoring related to the petroleum releases from an old underground storage tank, USTs, a VOC, volatile organic compounds, plume related to this former underground storage tank on the site is present to the west of the site. The landfill and the VOC plume are both active remediation sites.
But that's on the Northfield DPW site, and that was the
The
tank.
wells were on our property.
The wells
The
are,
monitoring.
but the
The
tank,
monitoring wells.
but the tank was not.
No, the tank, the fuel tanks were, I don't know why they're there. The fuel tanks that we had shared with the town of
School
Northfield, and
buses.
they were on the fire department property.
Yeah, so you need to get like DES approval to have those like closed and approved.
They've been removed. The tanks have been removed.
No, the wells, the monitoring
Monitoring
wells,
wells.
So they have to report that every, whether it's 6 months or 12 months, they take readings and they report it with the DEP.
Right.
And so
Where did
you,
that information come from? It seems to me, I remember something about that being brought to a close.
Well, I don't know if they've stopped taking samples from those wells. Their wells have little caps on them.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I haven't seen anybody there lately, but I remember people from the state used to come and take samples out of them.
I mean, there's
So
definitely
your-
discussion when I was.
My concern is like to the site work, what's this gonna do to site work? Like he was saying, we still have the unknown as far as, the cables and power, whatever, coming across the property. I don't know, did you just iron that out with the chief earlier, or? I don't think so, I
no.
think it does cross the
I
property.
just showed them where they were going through from that
Right.
telephone pole
So
back
you
to
have
the-
that as a minimum, that's an additional cost probably if we have to mitigate that issue. And then I'm just not, I'm looking at all this stuff with the site work, it's like but once we commit to something and we start digging and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, well, you know, Billy Joe Bob told me years ago that tank was gone, but we miraculously just found it again. And,
So the information you're including in this report is from that 2019 North Point Engineering report, which you've taken no credit for.
Right, we've said it was in a previous report, it's in this
Right.
report, we want to make sure it wasn't overlooked by somebody who
But
wasn't on the
So
committee back then, or
Right.
wasn't aware of it.
So what would your recommendation be? If we were to say, okay, we want to go with a Park Street site, what would your recommendation be to go through an entire new survey?
Go through DEP, find out what the last monitoring points were, and then I'd want to have a water test done in the soil where we're going to excavate for the new foundation, because the wells are on the opposite side of the building. So sometimes if the brook's down below there, the water will migrate towards the brook. Right now, I think the water's at 9 and 14 feet in the borings. If you look through the report there, you'll see on Park Street, there was water in the borings at 9 and 14 in different borings around the site.
right, and so when we go you go down to the floor drains, it's like the third before the bottom, the floor drains that were previously connected to the abandoned leach field site. That's where the floor drains were, and the Oil Remediation and Compliance Bureau should be notified if evidence of impacted soil is discovered during construction. Right, so this is potential, and that's because there was a possible pathway, they say, for the petroleum to impact soil. So are you saying do you think that would only affect the leach field? Or potentially could be the soil from the fire station to the leach field?
We have no idea until you actually get in there and start digging.
And that's my point there too.
So as far as the site work costs and then the building construction renovation costs, Park Street is more expensive in both situations, and there are more unknowns that could come up and increase costs. Like, are we worried about anything in the soil or anything that was like previously constructed at like Sanborn Road?
Sanborn, we went by the geotechnical reports. So if you read through the reports, it shows you that there's basically between 12 and 18 inches of topsoil at Park Street. Some areas it was like 2 feet in the corner. And then you have areas of fill that were there. And then the borings show us that there's a fine clay, which they didn't seem to bother when they did the final report. There's structural load on there was 3,000 pounds per square foot in the footing design, which isn't unrealistic. But the big concern with Sanborn Road is that septic system has to come out. We figured on Park Street, I mean, we figured 6,000 square foot of area. When you go to the septic system, you go 15% beyond, and then we figured a 4-foot depth of the leaching field, and then 2 feet of filtration below it. So 6 feet by 6,000 square feet. Removal of the septic, removal of all the uncommons there. You have an existing building that we'd want to put a one-sided wall. We figured that in there because you're going to load that new station up with the heavy trucks, and we don't want the weight of the soil pushing down through, even though it's going to be compacted while we're building. We don't want that compromised as we're doing. So we figured a one-sided wall along there. You have a 10-foot wall in the back, 4 foot of frost, and then you have to come up to the grade to bring that out so your foundation is the same height. So your foundation costs and your site costs are significant, and you have a lot of imported soil there. A lot of soil that's structural fill that has to come in under the slab. Some of the topsoil you can reuse around the site and fill in, but you still have to remove it in order to get your foundations in, get your drainage. And then we have to deal with the site water. You have a lot of roof area, and you've got to put it somewhere. You can't just dump it onto the site and let it run out into the brook or whatever. So you have a bigger water containment system that goes with that building.
And so that's all Park Street, correct?
That's all Park Street.
What are the major concerns for like the Sanborn Road site, if there are any?
Sanborn Road, reading the geotechnical report, basically we're going to remove the topsoil, about 8 to 10 inches of fill that comes off to get to our footings in one area. The other area in the back corner, it looks like they brought 3 or 4 feet of fill in. That would come out. That can be reused on the site.
Well, that's just for the footings though.
That's-
That's not for like the whole footprint of the building. That's just, you have to go down, like that one, I think that was like, B4.
Right,
Was that went down to the 4, it went down to the 4 foot?
4 foot.
If I read it, I thought that was just for your footings, where you only
It
had
will
to
be
excavate
for
that.
structural load, correct.
Right.
But then we've got to put 12 inches of good gravel underneath the floor, which would not be an issue because you got to bring it up anyway. Because if you look at the site slopes from Sanborn Road towards the backs of the playing field.
Right,
So as you go in, you're going to have about 2.66 feet of fill on the backside of that site and about 18 inches on the front.
right. Well, I just wanted to articulate that we're not excavating 4 feet of ground, of dirt, the whole footprint for that whole 19, or
I mean, we are
What is it,
excavating the entire footprint, but not to that
15,000
depth
square
in all
feet.
the
You're
areas.
moving the topsoil off of it, and then you're going to remove any unsuitable soils in there, which was pretty minimal on Sanborn Road. The other thing that makes Sanborn Road very attractive is that the road for the between the police station and the fire station, you could actually use that access road, and you can see it in the drawing there, we've actually done that to get your access to the back of the site, which makes it a lot more affordable, and you can get to both sides of the site. So Sanborn Road's, if you're looking at a site in one versus the other, one's a nightmare and one's a dream. I mean, that's literally when you look at a building on those two sites, that's going to be a lot more expensive, and there's a lot more unknowns on Park Street.
Yeah, no, I did a bathroom recently, and turns out the entire floor had to be reframed and replaced. So the wood cost there was more than the original quote of the bathroom, and then the actual bathroom space.
Yeah, and
Chief, I
then,
think I asked this question before. Has an environmental assessment been done on this Sanborn site?
I think
Because
the
you have
report
not
said
done an
no.
environmental assessment.
For
there
the
was one
police
previous
station,
one.
there was
There was.
environmental
And did it
site.
include
It says no in here. It does say that there was not an ESA in it.
But in the environmental site assessment for the police station was for the property, which I believe at the time included all of it. Now, I'd have to go back and read it. I have a copy of it, which I did forward to you guys.
yeah,
at some point.
we saw no environmental impact on the site.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Do we have a
clean.
report for
It's-
Park Street?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
we
That's
do.
what he's.
That's where it
Yes.
shows the wells.
That shows the
Yeah.
wells
The
and
septic
how it was a dump at one point in time and stuff like that. The back corner, it was the town dump, I guess, at some point.
I think it was a stump dump.
No, it was a dump
It
dump.
was an actual dump.
So the other thing on Park Street, and I don't know what your lease says, or whoever owns the tower, you have to read their language of how far you can encroach into that tower. I don't know that, we
So
didn't have that
They
information.
have the fenced off area, that's theirs.
You can go right up to that.
We go right up to it now anyways with our training facility.
Okay.
And then there's the underground stuff that they paid to put in, and they're not gonna change. They paid to have it there, and they have the easement to have it there.
Yeah.
So that's part of their lease, is the easement to have those utilities there.
Would we be able to move them, or would we have to like pay them to move them? I mean,
We would
they're-
have to pay to move them at this point.
Do those need to be moved for the tower?
Well, I brought that up, there are conduits going through that field that go from the Park Street back to that tower. They were
There's
flagged.
also conduit going from Park Street back to Park Street Station as well.
They go,
The flags are still there in the ground if you want to go
Yeah.
and look at them.
See this road right here, they go right to the tower right through there. There's a bunch of flags when we went out to, do the borings, they were all flagged off. And like Chief said, there's some others that came through here too.
One of the things in your report that probably ought to be corrected if it ever is stated to the public. You say the design load on the trusses is 40 PSF. That's roof load?
Roof load, correct.
Then you say the code required load should be 75. That's
That-
ground load, which is different.
No, that's the roof load, that's the new,
75 is our ground snow load in Northview
I believe the new code is 75.
for the ground.
What's that?
Ground snow load, what do you use in the Army Corps of Engineers, which is what IBC references?
Yeah, I'll check that and make sure.
I think it ends up being like 60.
I think we were talking about the trusses.
Henry
is-
Slope.
yeah.
But anyway, it's apples and oranges. It's not that deficient, but it is. It is deficient. I'm not saying it's
Yeah,
not.
it's deficient to the
But
point where it has to be
75
replaced regardless.
If we don't touch it, we leave it alone.
Leave it alone, it's fine.
Yes, but it seems
Other
like
than
we
you have a lot
can't.
of equipment in a building that is.
Well, that's the thing, you're gonna, when you have that 8-bay station, if we build an 8-bay station on Salmon Road, a lot of that equipment's coming out.
The only thing
It's
that's gonna
gonna
be in
relieve-
there will be the gator and the boat and
So the
truck,
non-essential,
right.
well, I
Right.
don't
Be
want
up
to call
to
it
the chief to
non-essential.
decide what's where,
the,
realistically.
you're not gonna have a tanker in there and you're
Yeah,
not
I
gonna have a
would.
ladder.
Right now, if we had two separate stations in the Parks, if we built Sanborn Road and had a Park Street station, that's me as a chief saying, we'd have the tanker and an engine over there right now.
Do we currently
The
have one over
tankers,
there right
the
now?
tankers you have, well, we
Okay.
don't.
We don't, I know it's the heaviest thing, but the career people don't get the tanker out, it's the call people that get the tanker
Well,
out.
with 8 bays over there, you ought to be able to fit a tanker in somewhere, I'd
Oh, yeah,
suspect.
we could fit a tanker in over there, but when you talk to the call guys, they don't wanna drive over there to get a tanker, they wanna drive there
Well,
because they
I'd
all
rather
live
have the
in that
tanker on a
area.
floor that's not gonna, get crushed.
So we could fit everything at Sanborn Road, but we don't need to if we built a new station there.
We have 11 vehicles that need to be undercover right now, so 11 spaces, but if you're building a box, the box is theoretically cheaper with 4 corners than if you start adding more corners.
Well, I
So
think-
that's why the 12th would come into place.
I think it's important to note, if we decide to keep Park Street and leave it alone, I think it's very important to keep in the back of our minds that it's still a deficient building, that there still needs to be work done on it at some point.
Yes, no,
And-
we definitely did do something about that location if we choose to build the new building at
Well,
Sanborn
I
Road.
think
but
the
they don't have
important
to
thing is
link.
getting the personnel out of that building. Using it as a garage, not as, there shouldn't be washing machines in there, there shouldn't be equipment decon in there, there shouldn't be, people should not be in that building except to walk from the door to get to the door of the vehicle and get out,
It's,
Other people that
it's,
come.
it's be impractical not to have people in here at some point. Call people especially, because, and that's where they want to be, that's where they all live around there, most of them anyways, and that's the station they want to respond from.
Are we thinking Park Street's all of a sudden dangerous?
Well, it doesn't meet code by any stretch of imagination. Though we could use it for what it's currently used for and
I'll be honest with you,
legally get
Kevin.
away with it.
What scares me most when I read the reports on the structure of that building, what scares me most, and Lisa's the expert here, but what scares me most is when I read about the strength of that front wall.
Yeah.
With the big garage
the
doors.
shear on that wall. is
And I'd probably
terrible.
feel safer if one of those doors got boxed in, because there's these huge openings in the front of that building that are, now granted, it's a gable end, but it still has to support some weight. That's what scares me when I look at that building, just as a layman.
Yeah, it wasn't, it's designed as a big hole, and the structure around it is not designed to take the shear, wind shear that building actually gets. It hasn't fallen down since 1986, and what are the odds, right?
Well,
Do you want to roll that dice?
I mean, I
I've
guess,
we
had
have-
people call me and say, it's never done that before, and something's failed.
So,
Worst
Worst thing you can say.
I'll give you a great
It's never done that
example.
before.
Today's 9/11. 22 years ago today, 2 steel structures, actually 3 totally steel structures, Tower 1, Tower 2, and Building 7, totally collapsed. Before that time, never did a steel structured building collapse, ever, totally collapse.
What's that got to do with?
So that's, it's, well, it's
we
an
do
analogy.
design different, we do design differently now because of 9/11 for fire.
It's an analogy.
But-
Just because it hasn't happened yet, and maybe it's never happened before, doesn't mean that it can't. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, we could have a tornado touch down and,
And your code building will go to hell too.
yep.
Can I ask a question about, I'm on page 4 of the space needs, and it's the very last paragraph, Jim, and it's discussing the hose drawing and hose tower and the whole necessity of that. And I guess I'd like to get some input as far as, you know, I haven't heard any discussion about a hose tower to point, up to this point, and
There was one in one of the other plans, one of the previous fire station plans.
In the
There was a
two
hose tower.
previous plans, the one for Manville Road and the one for the Tilton School property, there were hose towers included in those facilities. And they were also designed to be used for training purposes as well.
and how does that compare in cost to one of these motorized blower rotojet?
The motorized blower jet things are far less cheaper than a hose tower, but in
Far
my,
less cheaper or
the
far more cheaper?
Far more expensive.
more, the dryers are cheaper than a tower.
Right, that's what
So who has towers?
I don't know around here who does or doesn't, but I
The
know.
last tower I know of was Lakeport Station. When we closed Lakeport. there was
Yeah,
no more tower.
you're right, maybe Wolfboro does. I'm not sure.
It's the old one that,
But at any rate, what we do now is we lay the hose on the ground and in the bays, outside. We drape it over the railings. We got these little hooks beside the tanker that we put it on, and it's everywhere.
We don't have a hose dryer?
No.
We're not at space for a hose dryer.
So what's the intention here? Is it to put a hose tower up or to use
I
a jet?
How much space does this piece of equipment need?
probably, I'm gonna say 5 by 5 by about 8 feet tall, somewhere in that area there.
And well, how does it work? And
It's
do you have to still have-
like an electric dryer, but it just blows air. It doesn't spin like a washing machine dryer. But the electrical costs are pretty high on it, and
How does the hose run through it?
it doesn't.
Hangs on.
You put it in there rolled up, but you have to loosen up the roll so you can get air in between all the things. We had one in Tewksbury. It was broken more than it was working. And if the guys didn't put the hose in exactly right so that every coil around had 1 inch space between that and the next coil, it didn't work. It was more of a pain in the bum, and that's why they use the hose towers now in Tewksbury. Because the hose tower, you hang it up, it folds in half, and it hangs until it's dry. You bring it down, it's totally 100% dry. You don't get any mold, rot, slipperiness when you put it back in the truck. It's dry.
is the cost for that included in the Sanborn,
Yes.
the tower?
How big's the tower?
Makes sense.
Towers, because you have to fold the hose in half and things like that. It's about 43 feet tall.
It's not that big.
How square?
square, depends upon how
Yeah.
much hose you wanna be able to hang in there.
That's what I'm going.
So most hose towers are like 16 by 12, because you gotta get in there and the ropes will go up and stuff like that. Or you could, the more expensive ones have electric winches that we just use ropes.
It's kind of like a clock tower, like
Yeah,
bell tower in a sense.
yeah, it's about the same height. In fact, the one in Tewksbury had
12 by
Yeah.
12 by 40 is what I'm familiar with.
12 by 12 by 40, 144 times 40. I don't know that number.
Is it masonry?
144.
Typical.
Yes, it's block.
Block.
Yeah, 144. 288. Times 2.
So my next question is, on page 5, the next paragraph, the last sentence. Now, we kicked around last time, student dorms and career firefighter dorms. Do we want to go with student dorms? Now, I know we want to, but do we want to present this to the public?
What?
Student dorms.
We have one figured in with 2 beds in this study.
So we talked about when we had the department-wide meeting for the space needs, when Royal came in and talked to all the guys about it. There was a lot of discussion about it. They do want the students because they're very helpful, and it helps everybody. You know, helps us to be better firefighters, teaches them to be firefighters, and it provides firefighters for, they're not necessarily going to stay with us, but it's a continuation of a program. But then they started talking about, well, what if you have a male student and a female student? You gonna put them in the same room? That was like,
Well, you have to consider that.
well, so that's why, yes, I mean, but you probably wouldn't.
No, but I'm saying you have to
I
take
don't know
that
the
into
definition
account that you
between the
may
two.
have a female student.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you
Well,
can't,
this
you
is
can't,
one dorm room, one
Yeah,
dorm.
well, so
you only accept one
I
student.
guess that's my,
Concern.
I've been, well, when I first proposed having a student dorm, my old thinking was that there are no women in the fire service, which is totally
How large
false.
is that dorm room? And how large are the regulars?
So first I go back to your answer on the hose tower. It's 252 square feet. All that information's on the last chart. There's 2 charts in the back of your space needs study that has all the square footage for everything. And so the dorms, I'll give you that.
10 by 12 for a regular and 12 by 12 for a double. So
144.
144 and 124 single. So
At
It might be-
$351 a square foot.
I didn't read that online, I couldn't see it.
Yeah, I know. I was just gonna.
I was trying to blow the stuff up, I was like, because the way it was formatted, it went way bigger than my screen, I was just like,
I'm guessing that the square foot cost for the dorm room is less than the square foot cost that they've used for the whole entire,
oh, sweet.
but I'll let
Yeah.
Jim comment
Wow,
on that.
even this is
You know,
still
when
pretty
you-
small.
Right.
I use a magnifying glass.
When you're looking, we're just taking the 351 as an average square foot cost of the whole facility.
Correct.
I don't know what building materials you used, are we saying block maybe? or-
The split face block in Sanborn, and then solid block on Park Street.
Okay. And so the dorm space wouldn't be 351 a square foot for that particular space, it would be
No,
much
it's
less.
an average, right, yes,
So-
exactly.
So you can't really use the 350.
So what, general, we're talking generalities, what would the square foot cost be for the 2 dorm rooms?
Well, you have to take into consideration the entire building at this point, because we don't know what you're gonna build, so you could say it would be $120 a square foot, but then if you go
The only number you
something
can use is the one you
to
get.
351, right, exactly,
That's for every square foot.
right. Then
So
you,
it's-
some spaces are gonna be more expensive, because there's
Some
air
are-
compressor or air handler in that square foot. and some places are gonna be a little less, because you have different, so the average is 351 throughout the
There
building.
will
So
be,
it's hard.
there will be costs in that building that exceed 351 per square foot.
Exactly.
And
And there will be some that are
less,
significantly less than that.
like the dorm.
Oh, and even the other day, Chief was talking about,
Oh.
we were talking about some preliminary finishes and just doing a concrete floor, right? So that obviously would be less than a carpet floor or tile floor. But, you know, there's,
I mean,
different components. As we
those
get
costs
through-
would be the same regardless of the location, more or less, right?
no,
Right here.
no.
In terms of like adding
We have
the
square
dorm
footage
space.
cost, but your site cost is gonna be significantly higher on Park Street.
Okay, so as far as the hose tower or
Oh, it'd be the
adding-
same, yeah, it'd be the same cost for the amenities inside. It's getting your foundation, getting out of the ground would be more money on Park Street.
But in generally speaking, if you were to say, all right, we've got a, 14 or 16,000 square foot building here, if we take 1,000 square feet out, we're probably not gonna be able to take 351 times 1,000 and say it's gonna cost that much less. Because you're still gonna have all those,
The amenities that go into it.
You're exactly right.
you're still gonna have all the same number of bathrooms and heat, HVAC units on the roof and.
One thing I'd like to point out is section 5.3 on page 6. Just so everybody is, just so we're all on the same page. That second paragraph in section 5.3, the
It'd
second
be nice to have a
sentence
tabulation
says,
of all of the costs.
this option will provide 8 new bays located at the Sanborn Road location while keeping the 4 existing bays at the Park Street location.
Yes.
Just so everybody fully understands that the
Say
Park
that
Street
again.
station would remain.
And if you look on the chart that I just sent you, I just gave to you, it's the last 2 pages on your report. There's 2 columns on the far right, the blue heading on the top. One says Park Street with Sanborn Road, and one is Sanborn Road not being built. So there's 2 different scenarios there of what you would have for spaces, square footage, and usage in each building.
Are those the only copies you have of that?
They're all in everybody's copies, but
Very small print.
But if you look at them online, you can't blow it up.
I have these at the fire station, but that's as big as I can print.
Well, that's fine, I can read that, I can't read this.
I couldn't read it without a magnifying glass.
Oh, I need a
Even the
monocle
other
lens.
ones.
I can
Teams
I
tough,
can
but
take
it
the
works.
file to Staples and get it printed on bigger paper too.
Bigger than
well, we can.
most
You have the link too, Chief, right?
Yeah, I have the.
So we sent the link. They can actually get the link and go on and look in the Dropbox. You can blow it as big as you want to read
Right.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I can still only print it at home on this size
Oh.
paper, you know, so.
Printed to 8 pages.
Yeah, I tried that, on a different document.
Yeah, it doesn't
I
make
ended
sense
up-
when you get
Things.
multiple pages, but if
I
you
got
want
it.
it on bigger paper,
Oh, that's fine, because I can read that.
I can do that.
Okay.
I have that.
You can read this?
Yeah, I can read that,
Oh, boy.
yeah, yeah.
You want a bigger
Does the
one,
high
Kevin?
school have a
jealous.
plotter?
My nephew will make it so I can see it.
Yeah, I think if they had
Thank
changed
God
the
for
font
kids, huh?
size, it would have
We
worked
lost
out
it
better.
up.
But it
So-
may not have fit.
It wouldn't have fit, and then that's when the table becomes, like Chief said, it's hard to understand.
I guess this would be a question for you. Operationally, what happens if you leave Park Street as is and build at Sanborn?
We moved the headquarters to Sanborn, the personnel, the career personnel and the administrative personnel to Sanborn. We would still respond out of Park Street with mostly the call firefighters. All this, like, we keep both ambulances over on Sanborn because we just use both ambulances all the time. And right now, when we have a second call, which last month was 55% of our calls were simultaneous calls, the guys are running back and forth trying to get the second ambulance or from the ambulance, go get the engine because now it's a fire alarm call. We would keep 2 ambulances over there. My plan going forward is that if the budget is approved, we'll be buying another ambulance. And at that point, we would keep 1 ambulance over at Park Street and 2 at,
That would give us 3 ambulances?
yes. It wouldn't cost us any more than what it costs to maintain, because we already own the ambulances. And this would be discussion with the budget committee and the commissioners, but we need 3 ambulances, because when we have 1, I'll give you an example, we had 1 ambulance out this year, this last month for about a week and a half, and we lost 8 transports that we had to give away because we didn't have the second ambulance to do that transport. And we only received a mutual aid transport. I mean, we only gave we transported once in Franklin, so that's a net -7 in transports. So that's 7 bills that we can't get billed for, though we still had to respond to that call, but we couldn't transport the patient. So when you own the ambulance, all we have to do is put gas in it, change the tires, and if something breaks, fix it. It's far less expensive to keep what we have, because we keep them all in really good shape, than to trade one in and give all those calls away. And so far this year, because we have to maintain them, so one of them is out of service every now and then, we've given away probably 26 transports, at least.
But you still have to outfit that third ambulance. You may
Yes.
not have to provide extra personnel, but you still have to outfit it.
Yep, that's correct.
And what is the net, what's the dollar net on these 26 calls?
It's 26 calls, probably $13,000. Well, it's more than that, but
Well, it'd have to be over 100 to get my attention, because the ambulance is gonna be 300.
the ambulance is gonna be 382 plus the equipment. We're $575 for an ambulance, fully equipped.
$500,000 for an ambulance.
Yep.
But potentially generates 13 grand a month, which is, you know,
It's not
So
necessarily.
that's,
not a
that's,
month.
that's for the month that the other ambulance is out of commission. That's not every month. That's,
It's not, and it's not necessarily even the money. It's the service that we're trying to provide the people. We need 2 ambulances all the time here. And when one's broken, or one needs PM, we only have one. That means the people that are living in Tilton and Northfield that happen to have an emergency, a medical emergency, at the same time another one's going on, they're waiting. And that's not good.
So when that ambulance was down, was an ambulance from another town dispatched at the same time?
No, not necessarily, depending upon the circumstances at the time. But even if they are, this is not really germane to this.
No, I
meeting.
get
it.
Yeah.
It's still an
not a building
additional
committee
15
issue,
minutes.
It's
Yeah.
operations,
Yeah.
operations.
14 calls on Friday, 12 on Saturday. Both of those are all ambulance calls.
We
okay,
transported 119.
since we have Mr. Hardy here, I would like to ask how we stand on our Gantt chart for the schedule.
Schedule?
Yeah.
Well, right now, we're looking at February to have our schematic and design for approval to the building committee and the commissioners. So we're looking for, we've been waiting on our end and on your end, waiting for meetings and waiting to get things going. So I know tomorrow night we have the building commissioners meeting. We were hoping to have some traction on which site you wanted to go to. But we get the borings done, we get the reports done. You have the report Friday. We're going to start on looking at best practices for our HVAC to the building, what fits the road, and then start getting some early layout for both plans right now. Obviously, we only figured in our proposal for schematics for one building, so we don't want to wait too long to find out what building that is and then try to rush it through. So
Our next scheduled meeting is in 2 weeks, right? Well, we normally do, what, the first and third? Second and fourth, right?
So are we gonna have time, I know this schedule has done this, obviously, and we're still trying to crunch it in. Are we gonna have time for public outreach in this schedule now?
yeah, so what we did last time
Yes, we are.
we got together, we have to
Make
have
sure
that.
we do.
We always said we had to be done by September.
So
I mean,
we start the public outreach as soon as you figure the site out, then we get started on that right away. And start getting input as we're doing the schematic.
We're not gonna wait until the proposal's ready and we have whiteboards and all that stuff to do the public outreach. We're gonna start doing that as soon as the commissioners have selected a site.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
So
And we're gonna do this as a district. I mean, like in here, you're talking about talking to both communities separately. I think we're just gonna it's gonna be one public outreach each time. We're not planning on having Tilton North.
No,
This is
no.
gonna be a singular district meeting.
This is
Well, that's
open to both towns.
That's for you guys to decide how
Okay.
you want to do it, and then we'll support, I do think you want to try to hit as many people as possible, and you want to get the, people that are for it and against it, so you know why people don't want it, and, funding and everything, and try to answer their questions.
The only other thing that I was seeing in here that I personally would like to refrain from, because it has clouded the issue many times in the past, is to avoid Tilton PD discussion with the fire district. There was just one thing in here. I mean, I understand where you're coming from. You're like, hey, it's right next to the PD and this and that, but that's like taboo in this district. We don't want to talk about.
And their problem's been solved by that building, right? Is that
Well,
what you're saying?
Well, yeah, but some people will still be out there and they're gonna think this is gonna be like a life safety project in Tilton. I guarantee you can talk to them till you're blue in the face. But if you mention Tilton PD along with the fire department, we're opening ourselves up for input we
Yeah,
don't
so
want.
let's just characterize this as Tilton Northfield Fire District.
We will.
Never thought of it that way.
So I guess,
And I'm
like,
from Northfield, so.
if we
No, it's been
don't
poisoned in the past, but
have a decision from the commissioners as far as the location tomorrow, and it becomes when they meet, at the beginning of next month, how far does that set us
Well,
back?
we're gonna get an
Till
answer
next
before
month,
that.
yeah. It's going to push us back.
We're gonna get an answer for that.
Okay, but can the commissioners do
what I'm
that
gonna-
outside
Yeah,
of
they
their
can
meeting?
vote by email.
Okay,
What-
we can meet again.
We're gonna move this ahead. We're a couple months behind in the schedule. If we have any chance of putting this in front of the voters, this district hearing, then we've gotta keep moving forward. We cannot stop for anything. Whatever we decide to do, we have to propose this year. We have a police chief in Northfield who's talking about building a new police station, okay? He's throwing out that we need a new Department of Public Works building, okay? It's
We can
not gonna get
garage
any
we can sell.
easier to get this through.
so should we
Sorry.
vote on a location
Well, this
tonight then,
is what I
or-
was gonna propose is, when is our next meeting? Because we're off schedule right now. We were supposed to be, I'm sorry, we're on schedule.
We're back
This is-
on.
We're back on schedule. So this is the second Monday. We can either meet next Monday after the commissioners meet, right? And after Lisa and Kevin have an opportunity to review the information. Now, what about our two missing firefighters that I asked 4 months ago, are they planning on participating?
One's on vacation. Oh, they're both on vacation right now.
Okay, I'd welcome their input in this. I mean, that's why they're on the committee, right? They're supposed to be the spokespeople for the fire department.
Is Sanborn Road, I just
They're at the
realized, I'm
Space
sorry,
Needs
but
meeting, the
On the
department
outside.
meeting for the Space Needs, they were there.
is Sanborn Road drive-through?
Well, it can be drive-through. I think the discussion was back in from both ends and
Well, 'cause it's the
exit.
Are there doors on
next
both
to it.
ends of the
Yes.
Okay, so we're back on schedule. So do you guys want to meet next Monday?
I personally can't. I've got.
You cannot, okay.
Do we want to do an email vote from the chief
Well, I
this
think
week?
Lisa and Kevin will probably, after they read this, will probably want to have a discussion, and I would encourage it. So I think it's best that we get together and have a meeting.
Honestly, I think that the big volume of all that paper you sent us, I will definitely have questions, but I honestly wonder in my head how much of it is going to be that I'm going to understand.
Well, I think if you have questions, I think you could email them, or the chief could take a
'Cause I'm
a
sure
log
there's
of
a
the
lot
questions and send them out?
I haven't gone through it.
engineering terminology. I mean,
I think it's pretty,
you said you
not-
went through
it's
it?
pretty straightforward, I'm not an
I
engineer.
think it was, the geotechnical stuff was kind of like, but, I mean, they're
They
the
have their
experts, and you
executive
take their
summaries in there that
recommendation.
really
and-
wrap it up for you.
It doesn't surprise me one bit that the geotech is more costly in Park Street than it would be in this, over here in this, just because of the site. And you're starting with a clean slate
And,
over
and
here.
honestly, Kevin, when,
Yeah,
once
it's
they,
always cheaper to build.
once they envelop that, the site work into the space needs numbers, it really, it breaks down pretty, it's pretty straightforward. And if you go by the space needs requirements, and everything that we've talked about, and even envelop in, you know, another thing I wanted to touch on briefly was the 2019 building committee, what we voted on and what we expected back then. But we'll talk about that in a minute. If you look at, you know, everything in general form, it's really pretty easy to digest. It's not like it's really, you know, scientific or anything.
I mean, looking at the, site costs as well as the building costs, I mean, it's, about 2.5 million difference, in total cost between the two sites. It's pretty significant.
So,
Yeah, that's what I was
so
saying.
the question is are we good with meeting on the 25th?
I mean, I guess, how much is there any time next week? Well, I guess it doesn't matter if we meet next week versus the 25th, because,
Well,
it's
the
gonna
commissioners
be
meeting
before the
tomorrow night,
commissioners
it's all
meeting
after the
regardless.
commissioners.
Yeah.
But again, the
where I was
commissioners can vote by
recommendation.
email. All we need to do is give Lisa and Kevin enough time to review the paperwork and then get together as a group and discuss it again, and then present our recommendation to the commissioners. That's really our goal. That's our next step.
And can we do this by email? Like, say I go through and I read this and I make my list of questions. Can I send those questions to the chief? He can send them to them, they can get answers, and it comes
And,
back
yeah,
without
but
it.
I
I
recommend
don't
you
want to
send
tie
them.
up everybody's time. I just didn't
So if
get
you
a
send me
chance this
questions,
weekend.
I'm gonna send them to him. When I get the answers, they go to everybody with the
And
questions.
that's all within the
And if
process,
anybody else
right?
has questions, it's the same thing.
Is that all right?
happens.
I don't want to hold things up just because I didn't read this weekend, but I can get to it this week, look at it, and digest it. I mean, I still am grasping with the square footage thing, but I'm sure once I read it, I'll get it. The chart's going to tell me, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Okay, that's what I think.
And I think if you do ask questions like that, Chief, you send them to us, what we'll do is we'll keep a log. So all the questions are going to log with all the responses, kind of like an RFI log. So everybody will get the questions and the answers back as they come, even if there's one before, we'll just add it to the log, you'll get all the questions back again. Just one sheet, makes it easy.
Are you
I
good
mean,
with that?
I think it's pretty important that we,
Meet again?
as a group, know what each other's questions are.
Yes,
Yes.
without question.
So we want to meet on Tuesday, the 19th then? Or?
Now, wait a second, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Are you okay with that?
With,
With what Lisa just described?
yeah,
So Lisa submits a question to the chief submits it to Jim replies to the chief, and he distributes it to everyone.
that's perfectly.
Dennis, you okay with that?
I'm fine with it.
Lisa?
Absolutely
Nate?
within the realm of okay.
Tim?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good with that. So that's gonna be our plan. Now, let's set a date for when we're going to say what our recommendation is to the commissioners. So today is Monday, the 11th. Do you think
What is our next scheduled after today?
the 25th, which I will not be able to make? I can make anything the week before, any night the week before. From the 25th on, it's gonna be sketchy.
I can do anything next week as well.
See, what's next week's, yeah, the only thing I have next week is Tuesday and Friday.
I thought you said you couldn't do Monday, the 18th.
He did say he couldn't do
I
Monday.
did say I couldn't do Monday. I can't do Monday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I can do Tuesday and
Oh,
Friday.
I thought you said the only days you can't do are.
I was reading it the same way you
I
were.
was like,
Yeah, I'm like, wait.
I'm like, coming in.
Well, I vote for Tuesday because I hate Friday meetings.
Yeah, let's do Tuesday.
I can't do Monday through Thursday.
Budget, remember
You
that?
can't?
No,
Monday
yeah,
through
Monday,
Thursday?
yeah.
Okay, so Tuesday's no good.
Tuesday's good for me, but that's okay.
I'm just,
Can everyone do Friday?
Not if you want to stay married.
yeah. We'll have all our
So then-
wives.
so
and
then I guess
husbands
we're
call you.
we're waiting till the 25th then, as far as. But then you're not going to be here.
But that's okay, Tim can handle it for me.
So you're still saying you think we need to,
I'll talk
we
to
have
you
to
after.
meet?
We need to take
be
a
able
vote
take
unless
a
you want
vote,
to do
unless
the
you
email
that
vote.
by e-
But then we can't have discussion unless you and Kevin are
You know,
fine with having questions answered.
My 2 cents would be, if you guys can meet next Tuesday, then you should meet next Tuesday. It's almost a week earlier. And I'm gonna get all this through, because your recommendations come to the commissioners.
That's a very good point anyways, so. Tuesday the
Yeah.
19th then?
So we're paying the big bucks.
Everybody good with Tuesday the 19th?
19?
here at this
5:30.
time?
Right. And this is going to be in lieu of the 25th.
Correct.
Okay, Roger that.
Not in addition, in lieu of.
In lieu of.
Chief, is there a commissioners meeting 10-5?
10-5? No. It would be 10-3.
10-3?
Okay, so our next meeting is Tuesday, September 19th at 5:30. And that'll be right here, Chief?
Yes. As far, well, if it's any different, Kathy will let us
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
know. Or maybe somebody else. Maybe Courtney will let us know.
Okay, yeah, Courtney.
Um,
So I do have a couple requests from Jim, if I could. Can you supply the chief with a new progress chart?
Yes.
Please, that's updated.
For the rest of them.
I think that was it. I'm sorry, just one
Okay.
thing for you.
So I have a question for everybody. I think you're talking about public outreach. I don't think, once you pick the site, I think is probably a good time to start the public outreach and get everybody start to talk about it and find out what you're gonna have to deal with on the public side of things.
So, what was the first thing we talked about? We honed right in on it. Cost.
Yep,
So that's gonna be the focus. Nothing else matters except for the cost. Second thing is gonna be, how come it's in Tilton, not Northfield? How come it's in Northfield and not Tilton? So those are gonna be the focal points. Those
So-
are the things we gotta address.
so cost we can deal with once we have the site. We can hone in a lot better on your numbers, right? I think the other things, as far as why you're locating it, where you're locating it, would have to come from the people at this table, or the commissioners. But we can help you and get distances and things like that, and response times,
yes.
but a lot of that is gonna have to come from internal.
Without question.
Well, I mean, I think the answer to both those questions is cost for cost.
Yeah.
Well, I think the public's gonna need to see the costs that we see here, both sites. And-
Yes,
And
yeah.
then we need to explain why
Why.
we're choosing.
Exactly. We need to provide those details.
And I think it would be helpful to have it in a summary chart that includes all of the costs, including contingencies.
Yeah,
We have all
You've
that.
built
I built the
that
whole
in.
schedule, and on the site costs, we didn't just take numbers as cubic footage, we actually went to site contractors and got numbers for the site, so we feel very,
You got
very
cubic
confident
yards,
on the
yeah.
site numbers.
So I think what we need is a total number, like, with everything, because what we got was, the
We can do that per
space needs
yeah.
and the site, but what we need is, what is the total cost of, like, the site work and the building at, each
How much
location?
money are we borrowing?
So I can get you numbers, but the problem is when we're so early, the number's gonna change.
Only
Because-
as accurate as they are
We
here.
assume
Yeah.
that they're gonna be high at this point, correct?
Yeah, we're gonna have a 5.5% building
Is
contingency.
FF&E
We
included
don't
in the
ever
building?
want-
No FF&E.
So that's another thing that we have. Once the site is selected, we'll be able to narrow down FF&E.
Right.
But FF&E is still another cost.
What is that?
Fixtures, furniture, and equipment.
So a lot of the stuff was going from Central Station over to Sanborn or to Park Street, or depending upon what was happening.
Like, I guess, I don't know, like, system, like the Plymouth system, is that included in the?
That's included in the.
That's included in the building.
That's building costs
Yeah,
because
so-
it's essential to it.
A new phone system,
Not included.
not included. The, if we need new desks or other furniture, not included.
But we need to include them.
When we do our final number, all this needs to be included in that, and I will have to sit down with, so like, the electric rails that come out of the ceiling that we use to plug the trucks in, is that included? in the
That's
ceiling?
included.
Included?
It's in-
All right,
yeah.
so these are things that we have to narrow down to what isn't included, so I know what we need to add, what we can move from what we have, and what we need to additionally purchase.
Did you
But
say
once
that?
we get a site, we'll
Public
be able to
needs
do
to see
that.
the higher number.
Yes.
You never, ever want
Oh,
to have
yes.
to go back to the well. We want, and you know that through your.
And so FF&E, it might be $97,000, it might be $50,000, it might be $200,000. I don't know until we have a site selected and I sit down with Lorel and say, what is and what isn't included of all these things that I know that we need.
Yeah.
Because I have that list. I know what we need.
So is the vent
Depending
system
upon
going,
site.
or no?
Excuse me?
The vent, final vent?
The Plymouth
New.
would- New,
It's all new.
yeah.
It
The one
has
we
to.
have is beyond,
Archaic.
it's archaic and archaic
Well,
is.
it's only for 2 trucks.
And it's broken half the time. We spend more money getting it fixed than we should.
And other things that are built in, like you have, your reception area is all built in. It's not like
Yeah.
a desk that you can move.
No,
The lockers in the
but the
built in.
lockers can move, the gear lockers can move, the extractors and dryers can move, things like that. But what can't move is the built-in countertops that we use for our workstations and things like that. Those
Those would be included in.
Those would be included in the
cost.
building, the built-in countertops, but like, say, the chief's desk or the deputy chief's desk, probably not built in. A Kathy.
Well, we're
Those things-
7
yeah,
months away from
yes.
those discussions. I would like to take a minute and just kind of review, because several of us were on the 2019 building committee, and we came up with a recommendation, and I'd kind of just like to review that. So the majority of the 2019 Fire Station Committee recommended Directive 1, which was designing Park Street Station as a headquarters single station. And that was 6 of the 9 of us. And the recommendation was based on the following. And just listen to what we based our decision on, okay? The location is the geographical center of the district. That hasn't changed. The district owns the property, okay? Yes. Now the district owns the other property as well, so that isn't so,
We don't own it in Sanborn.
well, we will, if we decide to go that way. We'll sign a 100-year lease on it, right?
No, we'll own it.
Well,
We will own it.
for $1.
We'll own it for the cost of replacing the Center Street, tearing down the Center Street station and putting asphalt on it. That's what the cost will be for that piece of property.
And giving them the.
If this doesn't get an affirmative vote, we will not own that property.
We won't.
No, because we'll still be in Center Street.
Yeah.
We should pursue ownership of that property no matter what. But
That's a different discussion. Just trying to buy it outright is another option.
So the other criteria was, it was the lowest cost. Well, what we've seen here in the basic numbers is that the Park Street Station is actually it's higher cost, significantly higher cost in these early estimates. The Park Street Station would simplify and shorten the time to complete construction. Well, what we found is that we would have to transition the equipment from that station somewhere else and have a period of transition where the equipment would be outdoors or stored somewhere,
Unless we leave it alone.
unless what?
Unless we leave it alone.
Well, that's where he's going with the,
Well, they
Well, that's what
legally
we
can't do
assume.
anything to the site and leave that building alone because of code.
I think that's where you were going though, Paul. You were saying, you know, it was to lessen the burden of moving and so forth, and which this, you know, a new station on Sanborn Road affects nothing until we open it up, put new
Right,
equipment in.
exactly. So it doesn't
affects
simplify
nothing.
and shorten the time to complete construction by working the Park Street site. It actually significantly aggravates the construction.
And we'd have to build
I
a
don't know how
temporary
long,
fire station to house the gear, right?
I don't know how long it would lengthen or shorten the construction time, but it certainly wouldn't simplify it. And the other items are unaffected. Infrastructure exists, and one station has an advantage of efficiency. So so some of the criteria, some of the assumptions that we made back then, you know, 4 years ago, are not coming to fruition. So things have changed a little bit since that, you know, those discussions that we had 4 years ago, and I just wanted to kind of bring that to light, that what we're seeing here through, you know, a professional construction design company is that sometimes we make assumptions that aren't always accurate. So it's good to have that expertise of a professional company giving us guidance.
Well, four of your 5 items are no longer consistent.
Valid, yeah.
Well, the first one, and you probably know, I mean, I've always had issue with the first one. Though Park Street may be the actual geographical center of the district, it is not the geographical center of most of our call data.
Or the population distribution.
Which is
probably.
Right.
very subject to change, because it wasn't always all over there. Exit 20 development brought it over there.
But even so,
It
I
used
don't,
to
I
be
don't,
way more this way.
I don't,
Yeah,
I don't
that's-
see
that's
Northfield
not
becoming,
changing.
I don't see Northfield's population going to Canterbury in the next 100 years.
I think at the time, that was the right solution.
Correct.
But 5 years well, 4 years or 5 will have passed before you even start your final design, so things change.
Right, exactly.
And we had no site to compare to. So how,
Right.
it was easy
Sandman
for
Road
us to
was
say
not
that
a-
one's cheaper because we own it.
Well, and they had like new code regulations adopted by the state, so.
Well, that's why I
No,
was
I
saying one of
mean,
the biggest
the-
changes is the code just went into effect last year, so
These
that
assumptions and decisions were made on the information we had at the time. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that, you know, things do change, and, you know, what the situation that we're living in today is slightly different than what we had just, you know, this report was issued in 2020. And like I say, you know, we've got one. I'm sorry, I thought you were on it, but no,
No,
you were
it's
on the
just-
previous
I
one.
was on the 16.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I wasn't.
No, he wasn't on
No,
it.
you weren't on it, so 3 of us, sorry.
Tim and I were on the 16 one.
Yeah, so 3 of us were on it, and yeah, I mean, so assumptions change, and the validity of our decisions.
Well, really, the key player really is 49 Salmon Road availing itself. I mean, in the fashion that it did. I mean, without it, you know, it would
We'd be looking for property.
exactly.
Yeah.
Without it, it would still, it wouldn't have alleviated all that stuff.
Right, right. So, how's everybody feel about an adjournment?
Second.
Does Jim have any questions for
Aye.
us before?
Oh,
Do you have
No,
any questions for us?
I know you want the schedule back, I just want to put in there a date when we think you're gonna have a site selection. That's really gonna
That'll come
start the
from the,
schematic.
that will come from the commissioners.
Right, but, so if we meet next Tuesday and we give the commissioners our recommendation next Tuesday, then they can meet at some point by email or otherwise.
I would hope by,
Well,
Friday of next week,
You have a
there's
commissioner
decision.
and you have the chief.
Well, I'm not the chairman, so I can't call a meeting like the chairman can.
It'll certainly be discussed tomorrow
It will be
morning.
discussed tomorrow. I think, Jim, you'll be there again tomorrow?
Tomorrow night I'll be there as well.
So Jim can answer questions for the commissioners
Where are they meeting?
right here.
What I'm gonna try to do, if I can get in the office enough time, maybe I can have Max do it, is I have a plotter in the office. I'm gonna take those two charts in the back and put them on a 36 by 24, so they're nice and big and you can read them, be on plot size. I'll bring them to the meeting tomorrow night.
Is this a copy that's
You can have
available? Does anyone else want
I'm
one of
good.
these?
You said you had more at the
I've
station.
got it.
I have
I've got
more
it
at
on
the
the computer.
station if you need them.
Okay.
I'll blow it up on the computer where I can read.
I can print. I have-
Well, it's my intention to be at the meeting tomorrow night. Is there anything anybody wants discussed that we haven't, that you want to bring before the commissioners? Okay. Well, let's call it adjourned. Oh,
You
let's
say
take a
I'll
vote.
have your response for tomorrow night, whether 65 pounds or 75 pounds on the roof,
Let's call it a night.
65 snow
The
load.
Yeah,
party.
75, I believe, is ground snow
As they
load, and the
say.
40 that they, or the trusses
All's
were
good things
designed
must
for
end.
was roof snow load.
Okay.
It's still deficient.
Yeah.
I think it's like 60, than it should be on the roof.
I'll make sure Brian's our engineer.
That's it.
It's kind of irrelevant.
It's the
It's
30th.
just one of those little
We're
sticker
doing a band,
things.
not a meeting.
Mhm. No, absolutely, we want to get the right
Fair
information.
That's why I'm
apples
so
and
busy.
apples.
Tomorrow's meeting
I'm
is
not
here.
the Legion,
Yes.
the VFW.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned at
7:07.
7:07. Courtney, thank you for your diligent transcription of tonight's meeting.
And welcome aboard.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, I'm the, so with the VFW, I'm a state officer, but I'm also a district officer, so I'm a senior vice. Next year, I'm gonna be the commander of District 4, so I have to inspect all the posts we inspect, and a lot of them that have, and we have a lot of canteens, so we have to inspect all their minutes, their financials, and the whole 9 yards. So I'm going around with the new command, with the